beautiful sunny day here, so we're going to get cracking in the garden and make some planters. We're going to be painting them, we're going to be planting all of these goodies in them and arranging them in the garden. It's got a little bit of a DIY twist to it, but also some of my favourite colours that I like in the garden, some purples. I am not an expert gardener, so I am going to be sort of not making it up as I go along. I know a little bit, but hopefully I'll be able to create something really pretty, and hopefully the results at the end will be really nice. As always, before we get going with the video, if you would like and subscribe to my channel for more outdoor DIY and home decor videos, that would be amazing. Let's get cracking. So here's the planters that I bought. They are a clay fibre planter from Dunelm. They were £30 each and I bought 3. I'm going to give them a coat of paint, and I'm using Rust-Oleum garden paint, and this is the colour Silver Sage, just kind of like a slightly grey toned green. It's lovely. I've used it previously in the garden and it has really good staying power. You don't need to prime or anything like that. You can paint straight onto your item as long as it's clean and dust free. So I'm just painting it on all over, and I'm probably going to aim to do maybe 2, possibly 3 coats. This paint doesn't need that long to dry in between coats, an hour or so, and I went back in and did a second coat, making really sure to make sure I get the paint in all of those grooves. I've not bothered painting the inside because obviously we're going to fill this up with soil. I ended up only needing to do 2 coats of paint, as this paint's lovely and thick and the coverage is amazing. As you know, I love Rust-Oleum paint. I've used it a lot all over my house and in my garden, and I'll link this exact colour below in the description box. So here's how they looked after their coats of paint, so much better. Now I'm going to start filling them up, and because they're quite deep, I'm going to start filling them up with some leftover garden bits and bobs, so twigs, some dried grass, and this helps fill up the planter and mean you don't use as much compost, which can be expensive. So I'm just going to pop all of that at the bottom of my 3 planters. It's also a really good way to sort of reuse your garden waste, and obviously it also just breaks down underneath. Now I'm going to go in with my compost. I tend to buy my compost in places like Lidl or B&M. I think they're so much more affordable. I don't really think there's much difference. I could be wrong, but especially when you're filling up deep planters like this, it's good if you want to do it on a budget. I also used some leftover cardboard recycling. It's kind of like a very thin packing material, card or paper. This is really good to fill up your planters with as well, because this will eventually break down into your compost, but it just helps sort of build up your planters and mean, again, you don't need to use a lot of compost. I've seen people before who've created beds in their garden using sheets of cardboard. It's really good cardboard actually for gardening hacks, and it does, break down into the soil. So I'm on to my second bag of compost. The other one wasn't full, don't worry. And just spreading it all out and trying to make sure I filled up the whole planter so that I'm ready then to plant my plants. So all 3 planters are now filled up as far as I want to go, and it's time to start filling them up with plants. So these are the plants that I've bought. I've got some grasses, some other purple plants, some nice alpines, some small lavenders, and these really lovely plants which my mum calls sea pinks. So first thing I'm going to do is just start arranging them in the planter and working out where I want them to be. I'm going to start with these. My mum calls these sea pinks. So that's what I call them. I'm then dotting in my rosemary and then some grasses as well. And I've actually split the grasses into 2 little tufts. This is a big grass that I got from the garden centre, and I'm going to try and split this down the middle as well. Now, as I said before, I am no gardening expert, so I'm going to just try and do this as gently as I can. But it's my understanding that you can split plants down the middle as long as you're careful. So I'm arranging my plants how I want them, and once I'm happy, I'm going to start adding the soil and planting them in there. So I'm going to build up the soil around them. I've gone for kind of a symmetrical arrangement, and I'm going to do a similar pattern in each of the 3 planters. My planting colour scheme in the garden tends to be purples, pinks, soft greens and whites. I'm adding the grasses because I think that they add some really nice height. I'm hoping that the lavender will also create some height. Obviously it's great for bees as well and insects, and I'm really hoping that it'll provide some nice scent and a little bit of a pop of colour to the garden. These planters already had drainage holes in the bottom, so there was no need to drill the bottom of them out or anything. I'm just building up the compost around all of the plants, pressing them in pretty firmly and then adding the compost in and around. I'm not going to go all the way to the top of the planter because I think that would be a bit too much. But yeah, I'm just going to dot in some loose compost now around the plants that I've planted, and then I'm going to do the same in my other 2 planters. I love these sea pinks. I actually think they're one of my favourite flowers, along with alliums, which I really love. Even though I'm no expert gardener, I do really enjoy it. I find it quite a mindful activity. As someone who suffers with anxiety like I do, sometimes doing an activity like this, which is kind of creative, but you're outside in fresh air, I think is so helpful to my mental health. I usually put a little podcast on and listen to that while I'm gardening away. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with how these are looking. Hopefully when they grow they'll fill up the gaps, obviously, so we need to allow some room for that to happen. Okay, so here's how they're looking at the moment. Obviously not that inspiring, and I then cracked on with the other planters as well. Once I'd planted them all up, I obviously gave them a very good drink of water, and then a couple of days later I actually rearranged my garden to accommodate the planters that I've made. They're actually going to sit along this wall on the sleepers. I'm going to dot them along and put some other plant pots in between. I think the contrast of these planters against my dark grey fence is going to look really, really nice. As I said before, one of the reasons why I decided to do planters rather than planting plants behind the sleeper like the one you can see there is is because when I leave the rental property, I'll be able to take these planters with me, or I can very easily move them around the garden to a different place. I keep faffing around with them because I can't 100% decide where they're going to go. I'm definitely a bit of a faffer, but eventually I did decide. Sadly, one of my plants did get snapped in the process. This is called Verbena, I think. These are lovely. They have long stems, pretty hardy, with lovely purple flowers on the end. So unfortunately I had to snip that off, but it should grow back. So I'm going to add some other pots in between with some of my other plants. Again, I keep swapping them around until I'm happy. I've got a little magnolia tree, which I think I'm going to pop in here. I got that from Lidl. I really love the idea of the pink blossom that you get on a magnolia, so hopefully one day I have that. As this was quite a while later, as you can see, my plants sprung up. There was a lot of rain and a lot of sunshine, so can you see how much bigger they are? They all needed deadheading, so I went round with my little snips and just snipped off any of the deadheads, but I'm super happy with how they're looking. Everything seems to be growing really well, including the plants that I split, so I'm very happy that I didn't manage to kill those off. Deadheading is one of those jobs that you do really need to keep on top of. It does help, I think, give you a second flowering, and it obviously helps the plant if it's not trying to keep alive dead blooms. There was quite a few on these sea pinks and on the lavender, but as you can see, they've really filled up the planter, so I'm really happy. I think they look lovely. And here's how the finished planters look. So this is a couple of weeks later after lots of rain and sunshine. And yeah, super happy with how they turned out. The paint's holding up really well. I think the colour's really nice. It's just got that slight hint of a green, but it also has that grey tone, so it goes with my fences. All in all, I think the project cost around £150, which is quite expensive as the planters were £30 each. But I feel like they're really good quality and they really will last, so I'm super happy with them. I already had the paint, and I also got a lot of the plants when there was a 20% off offer in B&Q. So not necessarily a budget project, but one that will last, and obviously you can make them look exactly how you want. And there we go, that's the finished planters. I'm super happy with how they turned out. I hope you think they look good too. Let me know in the comments what you think. And I'm quite pleased that my splitting of plants does seem to have worked, so that's cool. Yeah, I can't wait to crack on with the rest of the garden makeover. If you're not up to date, make sure you check out my other garden makeover videos, and I will see you again next time. Bye.